Stop and imagine the following for a second. Imagine that you are living in a prison as a prisoner for a lifetime. The prison is in the middle of nowhere, so there seems to be no escape. You were born free, but you have been in this prison as long as you can remember. You don't have memories of your early life, but you subconsciously know the feeling of freedom and you want to experience it again. But one day, you are told that you are sentenced to death. They don't tell you the exact time. They can come any day and take you for execution. What would you do not to go crazy in this impossible situation? How could you live like this and keep your sanity? One strategy would be to try to forget about the death sentence in every possible way. You don't think about it and don't speak about it. When someone mentions it, you try to ignore it. You pretend that you won't be executed at all and that everything is all right. You spend your time with mundane tasks just to divert your mind from the impeding thought of death. You become aggressive when someone mentions that you are sentenced to death, and even start fights with other inmates. You create problems for yourself, which your mind then has to solve. Your so-called life is mostly a strategy to divert your thoughts from death. You create a routine in the prison because this gives you a false feeling of security and continuity. You collect money, connections, and power because you unconsciously hope that these will save you from the death sentence somehow. You deaden your life just to forget about death. However, you see your inmates taken away by the executioner one by one. You don't see where they go, but they never come back. This reminds you again of your own future, and the repressed thoughts and emotions rise to the surface of your consciousness. You create false hopes that maybe the executioner won't come for you, even if he takes everyone else away. Or if he comes, he will spare you because you are special. Or that maybe they just take everyone to another prison instead of the execution chamber. Or maybe you will be rewarded for good behavior and you will be taken to a luxury prison where your friends are already happily waiting for you. And those behaving badly will be punished in a torture chamber forever somewhere underground. If everything else fails, you hope that the manager of the prison, the warden, will save your life somehow. You have never seen him, but you know that he is the most powerful person around here. But you are not sure that he even exists because nobody has seen him yet. You believe in him, otherwise, who would organize the prison so well? So you hope that there are hidden cameras in your cell and that he is watching you. You pray to him, asking him to solve your little problems, make your life comfortable, and ultimately to spare you, but he never answers. And then, when your day comes, you are not ready to go with the executioner. You are utterly scared, and you regret all the things you didn't do in life, and all the time you wasted on your stupid problems and mundane tasks. But now it is too late to live a life that really matters. Well, you don't have to imagine all of this because it is your everyday reality. But I think you already guessed it. The prison is your ego and the sentence is death. The other prison you hope for is your next life, and the good and the bad behavior are your karma. The luxury prison is heaven, and the torture chamber is hell. The warden is God, and the executioner is death. So, how can you save your own life? If you stay in the prison, the electric chair is unavoidable. The only way is to escape from the prison. But wait, I told you in the beginning that there seems to be no escape. This is still true, but a few people are already living outside of the prison. Outside, there are no walls and no death. How did they manage? You have to use their help if you want to get out. The only trick is this. You have to realize that the prison is not real. You are creating the prison in your own mind, and you imagine that you are an inmate sentenced to death. But if you forget about your death sentence, you will never have the motivation to try to escape. You will just accept your situation like all of the others and hope for the best. So the first thing to do is to remind yourself of the electric chair and face death. But why did you build this prison in the first place? You built these walls to protect yourself, but the very same walls became your prison. There is something out there that you are even more afraid of than death. It is nothingness. It is the ultimate void. It is being nobody and disappearing forever. The truth is that you are so much afraid of freedom that you choose imprisonment and death instead. At least you already know life here, but you don't know what is out there. You could freely walk out of the prison. The doors are not even locked. Maybe you already glimpsed outside and found yourself at the edge of the void, at the border of nothingness. You knew that if you stepped out, you would surely die. But why die so early if you can live a little bit more in your cell and hope for a savior? You got so scared that you turned back, and now the prison is your only reality. Yes, if you step outside, you will really lose yourself. But you have to lose yourself to find yourself. This is a conscious death, but only your ego will die, and you will win total freedom. Your ego has to die for you to be free. You have to sacrifice yourself to save yourself. The only way of escape is to realize that you were never really inside the prison. The whole thing is just an illusion. And then you have to let yourself fall into the void and become one with everything and nothing at the same time. Experiencing death is the only way to escape from a dead life, from the fear of death and from the prison of your personality. Death is like a shadow, just like your ego. Both of them are unreal, but they seem to be real. All your life, you are running from the shadow of the fear of death because you are scared to face it. Death is the monster from your childhood fantasies. You only have ideas about it, but you have never really met it. But as you heard bad things about it, you are scared. If you hear a strange noise in the darkness, you don't stop to check whether it is the monster or not. You start running away, because even if the noise came from a small cat, you cannot take the risk. The last thing you would want to do is to face this monster and get to know what it really is. So, you are running away, scared from an idea, from a shadow, without checking the facts for yourself first. And this act of running away is exactly what gives the power to the shadow. Your emotions make it real. The more you run away from the monster, the more real it will seem. But you cannot really run away from your own shadow, and you can never really forget that you are going to die either. The only way to stop this nonsense is to look at the shadow and realize that it is only a shadow and nothing more. So, I urge you to stop running away from the thought of death. Face the monster and stop feeding it with your fears. In fact, the idea of death is the shadow of the ego, which is the shadow of awareness itself. Death is a shadow of a shadow. So if you want to get rid of the fear of death, you have to get rid of the personality first. In the light of consciousness, all the shadows will disappear at once. You are afraid to lose your identity, and this is why you are afraid of death. The fear of death is only the fear of the death of the ego. Only the ego is afraid of death, and the ego dies when you can separate yourself from it and see that it is only a shadow of your consciousness. You have to disidentify yourself from your body, your emotions, your thoughts, and everything else you think about yourself. Thus, you lose everything that is mortal in you, and you become immortal. Death is the second biggest lie in life. Only the ego is bigger. The idea that you are a separate, individual being living in an objective world. You may ask, where will you go after death? I say, where would you? You are always here, always have been, and always will be. Space and time are inside consciousness. Yes, Consciousness wakes up from the dream momentarily, and then again it starts dreaming that it gets reborn inside a body. There is no objective world and no objective other world outside consciousness. Because death is not an actual objective phenomenon, it is possible to experience it before the death of the body. The only real death is psychological. The spiritual path is about killing your ego, but there are two huge difficulties with it. The first is that you cannot kill the ego because the desire to kill the ego also comes from the ego. All desires come from the ego. Desiring itself is its fuel. The good news is that the ego is not a fixed phenomenon, but a process. The ideas about yourself are changing all the time. The old idea dies, and a new idea takes its place. So the process of the ego is also continuously dying. You are keeping it alive in your mind. The trick is to just let it die. Just let go of it. The second difficulty is that the last thing the ego wants is to die. Even if it suffers, it wants to survive. The ego wants to live forever, no matter what. When you become one with everything, you also become one with nothing. When the ego dies, you become nobody, and inside you will be infinite nothingness. The main desire of the ego is exactly the opposite: to be somebody, to be special, to be separate. So the ego is afraid of this process, and many times it turns back just before the breakthrough would happen. When finally the death of the ego is experienced, it feels like an awakening from a dream. In this sense, awakening is also a death, the death of a false reality. Awakening, orgasm, meditation, deep sleep, and even physical death have one common factor. In all of them, you experience a temporary or permanent death of the ego. The process of the ego stops for seconds in everyone, but most people do not even realize it. In some people, the change goes deeper, or they are simply more aware of it. This rare moment is called satori, or sudden enlightenment. This is a temporary enlightenment, because although the ego stops, it also returns. But even if you never experience it again, you will never be the same again. Other people's consciousness tends to fluctuate between the states of the ego and that of pure consciousness. The task in this stage is to maximize the time spent without the ego. The seed of enlightenment has to be protected and nurtured to let it become a tree with deep roots and a thick trunk. The goal is to reach the stage of permanent enlightenment when the ego dies totally and disappears forever. This is the end goal, but you need to approach it from your current position. So now, let's start with the first death awareness exercise, the detachment from the material world. Let's face it, we all want a comfortable life. This means we need objects that make our lives comfortable and money to purchase these objects. But there is a big difference between needs and wants. Did you ever buy anything you didn't even need? Was it because you believed the marketing hype, or maybe because you wanted to show off? Would you really pay so much money for an expensive sports car if you could not show it to anybody? If you knew that nobody would associate the car with you, wouldn't a simple car be enough to take you from A to B? The question that differentiates the needs from the wants is this: would I buy this product if I could not show it to anybody? The question is important because it reveals another trick of the ego: the association with objects. As I said before, the ego cannot stand on its own, so it needs to attach itself to different things. You think that if you associate yourself with a valuable thing, you also become valuable. When other people recognize this valuable product and they see that you are its owner, they also recognize and acknowledge you. As you already know, this is a false achievement. You should be valued not for what you own, but for what you are. Don't let your ego derive its value from your possessions. Detach yourself from the objects that you own. Disidentify yourself with them. You arrived to the world with nothing, and you will leave the world with nothing. When you die, you cannot bring anything with you, but you can leave something behind. Instead of collecting money, collect experiences. Instead of creating wealth, create a legacy. Besides, possession is a double-edged sword. Not only you own your possessions, but your possessions own you as well. If you let your possessions become part of your identity, it will be very hard to let go of them. That is why losing everything can become a crisis and a first step on a spiritual path. To make things easier in the first place, I urge you to live a minimalistic life, buying only what you really need. But don't confuse non-attachment to money with the renunciation of money. Don't suppress desire. Understand it. You can be totally free from your possessions psychologically while owning them physically. The key is to enjoy them without attachment. Use them, but be perfectly aware that they won't last. I don't want you to be poor. I want you to be rich. Be rich not only financially, but in every aspect of your life. About 80% of possessions serve to show off, and about 80% of all human activity exists to strengthen the ego. You can live a really simple and happy life by keeping the other 20% and throwing away the rest. You can have a simple life both as poor and rich. That is not the point. The point is knowing your inner richness, which can never be taken away from you. Ironically, the way to this knowledge leads through facing death, something you don't want to do, but the only thing you need. Outer richness feeds the ego tremendously, because if you are rich, you are somebody. You think that the more money you have, the more valuable you are. Losing your money would mean losing your value. So, rich people are usually more closed and protective because they have much to lose. Some rich feed their egos through comparison and sometimes look down on the poor. This feeling of being special is what makes non-attachment really difficult. But the truth is that both the poor and the rich will equally die in the end. The other process that complicates things is the fight for money. The fight itself feeds the ego, and you feel that you need to fight to survive. Well, survival is one thing, and feeding the ego is another. Many people who reach their financial goals stop and ask themselves, and now what? Some even fall into depression. If a goal gives meaning to your life, and suddenly one day this goal disappears, it is natural that you don't find the meaning anymore. So instead of fighting for money, do the things you already enjoy, and you will never have to ask this question to yourself. Besides differentiating your needs from your wants, there is another powerful method to disidentify yourself from the objects of the world. I call it the eyes of death. You have to look at the world as already dead. The objects you perceive are changing all the time, and in the end will break, disintegrate, and disappear. You have to look into this inevitable future in the present moment. When you look at a building, imagine it crumbling down and its building blocks disappearing into the ground. When you look at a car, imagine it crashing into the wall. See it in the junkyard rusting away. When you look at any of your possessions, imagine that you lose them and see that still you remain complete without them. Right now, you may look at the world as objective and solid, and to yourself as subjective and fluid. After doing this exercise many times a day, the perception will turn into its opposite. You will see the world as a chaotic, ever-changing flow of energy, and yourself as the immovable center who observes this world. You will become the eye of the hurricane, the center in the chaos. You will feel that the observed world is a huge river that is flowing around a solid rock, you, the observer. This method will bring you more inside by facing the inevitable reality outside. The practice of the eyes of death is not only meant for objects, though. It wins even more importance when you start to practice it in relation to other people. Thinking about the inevitable death of other people brings real love, forgiveness, and appreciation in your life. Contemplation on death brings compassion to life. Many people regret their last words with a loved one. Maybe they say something stupid, wish something bad, or do something wrong to the other person. And then the next day, they hear the bad news. The loved one suddenly dies, and now they cannot take their words back, cannot undo what they did to him. Now it is too late. They cannot ask for forgiveness. So they often regret their last words until the end of their own lives, without being able to forgive themselves. The catch is that you can never know which words will be the last ones that you say to somebody. So finish every conversation as if that was the last one. If you have been waiting to say something to someone, just say it, because this time may be your last chance. If you love someone, express your love. In the face of death, there is no place for waiting or for lies. And remember, you are always in the face of death, just like every other person in your life. Say goodbye every time as if you said goodbye to a dying person. Just imagine how you would treat a dying person. You would be respectful, loving, compassionate, sincere, authentic, and tender. Now you just have to realize the fact that everybody around you is dying. It is just a matter of time, but the process of dying is always there, silently in the background. So you should treat everybody accordingly all the time. Could you treat a dying person badly or with disrespect? Could you wish anyone bad things in the door of death? Could you be angry at someone lying on a deathbed? The key to authentic compassion is remembering death, looking into the inevitable future with the eyes of death, and realizing that everyone around you is going to die. Everyone before you died, everyone around you dies, and everyone after you will die too. If you want to experience this even deeper, take a walk in a cemetery and observe the tombstones. Look at all the names of different people who used to exist just like your friends and family exist now. It is only a question of time before everybody around you ends up here. So until they are still in your life, give them a warm hug, enjoy the gift of their company, and shower them with as much love as you can. Start today, because it can be too late tomorrow. If somebody hurt you, forgive him. If you did something bad, say sorry. If you lost contact with an old friend, renew the relationship. If you love someone, express it. In the face of death, negative turns automatically into positive. Resentment turns into forgiveness. Indifference turns into care. Badness turns into goodness. Lies turn into truth. And hate turns into love.